This is going to be a quiet reflection on starting over later in life. I am 56 years old. It is 2026, and I can retire in 2029. Now, I know a lot of people start over later in life. And if nothing else, if you really think about it, when you retire, isn't that starting over? No, you're not getting a new job, hopefully, but you're starting a new, section or a part of your life. You're going from hitting that alarm clock every day to what's an alarm? Why is it going off? So, again, you're starting over in retirement. Maybe you have grandchildren now. Maybe you did get another job. Maybe you're volunteering. Somehow, some way, you are starting over later in life. So, let's talk a little bit about it. Now, I want to talk about starting over later in life without the drama that usually comes with that phrase, starting over. Because a lot of people think starting over, well, something bad happened and you got to change the direction of your life or move into a new city, something big. But again, maybe you just retired. That's not really chaotic, is it? It shouldn't be. Now, again, people talk about starting over as if it has to be loud, as if it needs a moment, an announcement, a reinvention montage, if you will. But I'm here to tell you, it don't. It doesn't need that. It doesn't need to mean that. Let's be honest. Most real beginnings don't look like that, now do they? Most of them are quiet. And let me be real with you, as I will with all of these, essays I'll be reading. There is nothing, and let me repeat that, there is nothing wrong with quiet restarts. Starting over later in life, well, it rarely feels like excitement. And do you really want excitement later in your life? Now, I know when we were younger, that was the thing. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to travel. I want to spend time with my friends. I want to go to nightclubs. I want to go dancing. Do you really want to do all that stuff now, later in life? Or do you want calmness? Do you want peace? You want to be comfortable? You just want some quiet, right? Now, starting over later in life, it feels like an adjustment, as it should, in my opinion. It's like standing still long enough to admit that, what used to fit, it no longer does now. Things have changed. You've changed. People around you have changed. And remember, there's often no collapse, no catastrophe that's causing you to start over later in life. It's usually just a slow realization that you have outgrown something without replacing it yet. But you know what? That space, that in between, that's where a lot of people panic. That, fear of the unknown. Let's face it, starting over later in life doesn't photograph well. It does not impress anyone. And it does not come with any kind of applause. You know, people don't want you to start over when you're later in life. A lot of people just want you to go sit down and be quiet. They have no use for us old people, or so they think. It's like they seem to forget that we have the knowledge. We usually have the income that, we can spend it on things if we wanted to. But yeah, they just want to kind of lock us up in a closet and forget about us. You've done your time. It's now time for the young people. But is that really the way to go? I say no. Now, there's this myth about reinvention. Let's talk about that a little bit. We've been sold the idea that starting over means becoming someone new. But let's be real. Most of the time, it really means returning to yourself without the pressure. Don't you want that? The no pressure part? I know I do. You see, in my opinion, later life beginnings are not about transformation. They're more about subtraction. Let me explain. Well, there's less explaining. There's less forcing. There's less performance stability for people who don't live your life. You know, there's this saying or phrase that my sister and I talk about a lot. It's something like, I'm 50 years old. You can't tell me anything. You can't tell me what to do. And don't you think that's true to a certain extent once you reach your 50s or 60s? Because by then you've lived a life. It might not be the life you envisioned when you were younger, but you've lived a life. And so if you're going to reinvent yourself, let me ask you something. Are you going to become a better version of what you did become? Or are you going to become the best version of what you thought you would become when you were younger? Don't you think that's the real question about reinventing yourself later in life? I mean, really, what do you think? Now, what about watching others settle while you're doing all this adjusting, while this reinventing yourself? That's one of the hardest parts of starting over later in life, is you're doing it while watching other people appear to be settled. But let me tell you something. Appearances are loud. Adjustment is quiet. You may look unchanged from the outside, while everything inside you is being rearranged. Now, you know somebody like that, or you've experienced that, right? You've seen somebody that maybe it shocked you when something happened and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was going on with him or her. We've all experienced that, right? Now, even though you look unchanged and everything on the inside is really being rearranged, that's okay. You know, that doesn't mean you're behind. You know what it does mean? You're being honest. It just means you're honest, plain and simple. And don't forget something. Some appearances aren't real, not factual. You know, a lot of people seem to have life figured out. They seem to have everything going their way. But you know what? They're living a lie. We never really know what's going on behind closed doors, behind the scenes. Now, do we? Don't fall into the trap. Another phrase that thrown around all the time, keeping up with the Joneses. Don't fall into that trap. If you need to start over, if you need to reinvent yourself later in life, do it. It's your life, right? Now, let's talk about what'll happen. You're going to get so tired. There's going to be that exhaustion of having to explain your timeline to people. Or so they think, right? You see, that's a particular fatigue that comes from feeling like you owe people an explanation on why you're starting over. They'll ask, well, why now? Why are you starting over now? And why are you going in this direction? Or why didn't you do this sooner? But let me ask you, Do you really owe anyone any explanations? You're over 50, remember? No one can tell you anything. No one can tell you what to do. So doesn't it also conclude that no one can question what you're doing? This is your life, not theirs. I want you to think about it this way. They're probably asking you all those questions because they're jealous, they're envious. They want to start over too. They want to reinvent themselves too. But they feel stuck. They feel pigeonholed. I mean, let's be honest. You get married, you have kids, and you have responsibilities. Not just to yourself, but to your spouse, your partner, your kids, your grandkids, and on and on and on. Now, I'm single, I'm not married, and I don't have kids. Those were two conscious decisions, that I made, and I'm glad I made them. But I do live with my younger brother and older sister, so I feel responsible for them. I'm the breadwinner in the house. Can I start over if I want to? Can I reinvent myself if I want to? Yes, I could. But even I still have to take into consideration my siblings. Because again, I'm the breadwinner. I just can't up and say, well, I want to take a job in New York or California or wherever the heck. What are they going to do? You know, it's hard economic times, y'all. A lot of people, a lot of families are living together now. Multi-generational homes. Mark my words. That's going to be the wave of the future. If it's not already here, and it probably is. So I get it. I know you have obligations to your family, to yourself. But if you're truly unhappy, if there's something you really want to do, why not try to figure out some kind of way to reinvent yourself, to start over? And I'm not saying, let's say you have a full-time job and you have benefits, stuff like that. But you want to open your own business or you want to do something. I'm not advocating that you just walk away from that full-time job with benefits. But what I'm saying is start working on that business you want to build. You can start on it part-time. You can build it a little bit slowly at first. And eventually, if it takes off, you can reinvent yourself and become, a business owner, right? Stop living your life. We all need to stop living our lives and end up with so many regrets. What if I tried to open that job? Open that business, I'm sorry. What if I tried to open that restaurant? What if, what if, what if? We all have regrets, don't we? I know I do. There are so many things I wish, I had at least tried to do. I wanted to go to medical school. I didn't even try to go. And I always wonder till the day I die, what if, what if, what if? You know. So all I'm saying is try to do what you have to do to reinvent yourself, but you don't have to just jump into it right away. You can ease into it. And maybe that's the best way to do it, is to ease into it. Because again, you have family obligations. We all do. Now, you know what'll stop, not stop, but you know what'll start happening when people keep asking you, why now? Why this direction? Why not sooner? You're just going to stop answering them. It's not that you're going to be bitter. You're not going to be mad at them. You just like, you know what? I have enough self-respect and I know I don't have to answer this question to anyone. And you're just going to stop. Because remember, your timeline on starting over later in life, it's not a group project. Young kids say, do you? Well, you need to do you. You do not need to do what everyone else wants or thinks you should do. Remember that. Now, let's talk about success. Has your definition of success changed from when you were in your 20s? Mine has, most definitely. In my opinion, success later in life, well, it often looks slower than it did when we were younger. I remember being in one of my graduate classes, and the professor asked, how do you define success? So, I'm in my 20s. And I said, well, I want to have a job where I'm making six figures. I want to have a nice house. To me, that was success. And I remember somebody in class, he was married and had a young daughter, and he's like, well, I want to be healthy. I want to live a long life and be there for my wife and for my child. He said nothing about the home. He said nothing about the job. And I'm going to guess he was in his late 20s, early 30s. So fast forward now, 30 some years later, I'm kind of where he is. Again, I'm not married. I don't have kids. But, well, for me, success, just waking up every day and seeing another day and being able to pay the bills, that's success to me now. I'm not worried about the salary. I do have a nice home, but money isn't everything. Your health is everything. And if there's any young people listening to this, and I hope some are, but my target audience is people in their 40s and 50s and older. But young people, take care of your health. Don't take it for granted. I remember my first job after graduating with my bachelor's degree. A lady worked there, and she was about 20 years older than me. She told me something, and it stuck with me, and because it was true. She told me that, Buffy, you know what? Right now you're young, and you might get an ache or pain, and the next day is gone. But when you get in your 40s, those aches and pains aren't going to go away. They're going to last a few days. Oh, I remember thinking, oh, Miss Jackie, that's not going to happen. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be good. No. The aches and pains do stay. They do last for days. So if you can take care of yourself in your 20s, you're still going to have aches and pains when you're older. Don't get me wrong. But hopefully you won't have all the health conditions that some of us have in our 50s and 60s. I'm talking hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, or what have you. There's so much education out there now on how to eat, how to stay active. And not just in your 20s, but you're going to do that for the rest of your life. So just take care of yourself. I cannot stress that enough. I wish, you have those stories or those questions, what would you tell your younger self, now that now that you're older? And that's what I would tell my younger self. I'd probably have to shake a young Buffy, like shake some sense into her, maybe slap her face, pop her upside her head or something, but eat better, exercise. If it's just walking, do something. Yeah. So, yeah, young people, if you're listening, take care of your bodies. And not just physically. Massage your mind. Keep learning. Keep reading. Um, yeah. Yeah. You need to do all of that and then some. Now, we were talking about redefining success. And, I said it looks slower now, and it does. But you know what else it looks like? Smarter. You know, my father told me a gem when I was young, and I got it then, but I didn't really get it because I hadn't experienced being in the workforce full time yet. But he told me, don't work hard, just look like you do. So, yeah, be smart about your success now. So, now in my 50s, success looks like choosing sustainability over acceleration. Remember, I told you I don't want to go out to parties and clubs. I never really did that. But now I want clarity over chaos. I want peace over performance. Lord knows now I like my calmness, my quiet times. My ability to choose what I want to do and when I want to do it. Sounds like retirement, don't it? But again, I told y'all I can't retire for another 3 years or so. And these last 3 years are going to kill me. I can feel it now. Because I want to retire so bad. I've been working since I was 15. So over 40 years, 41 years plus. But yeah, success to me now looks a whole hell of a lot different than when it did when I was in my 20s. Now, success now, it's like, as far as starting over, that's like beginning again without rushing to prove that the beginning is justified. Heck, no rushing, period. Remember, I said calmness, peace, clarity, quiet. So slow and steady. You know, a friend of mine told me the other day, and it humbled me, but he told me, Buffy, just stay boring and consistent. And I was like, what? And again, he said, just stay boring and consistent. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that is me. And the older I get, I want more of that boring and consistency. You know, I know what to expect. I want to be at a point in my life where the little things don't trigger me, that I stay calm, that I can figure things out without getting emotional, without getting upset. Because I've learned in the past, getting upset and getting emotional, well, that's when I tend to miss things. And I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to misunderstand things. I want to hear what's going on. I want to see what's going on. I want to try to figure out, well, what's going on and some solutions to the issues, the problems. You can't do that when you're emotional. You're upset, you're yelling, you're shouting. You can't do that. So yeah, later in life, I want to not sweat the small stuff, as they say. I don't want to be triggered. So if you're at a point in your life where you're starting over later in life, it's okay to do it quietly. It's okay to do it without spectacle. You are not late. You are precise. You're not behind. And no matter what, you do you. If you need to start over, start over. But again, I know, like I said earlier, we have responsibilities, not just to ourselves, but to our families. So if starting over means taking baby steps, doing something part-time, a little bit at a time, then that's how you do it. But stop ignoring what you want to do. Stop, well, doing you. The more you ignore it, the more you don't do what you want to do, the more regret you will have, the more resentment you will have towards the people in your life, your loved ones, your co-workers, the more resentment you'll have towards yourself. Then you're going to go down the road of self-hate, and you don't want to go down that road. You know, it took me 40 years to get to a point where I loved myself. Yeah, 40 years old, and I finally said I love myself. 40 years. It took me 40 years, though. And I've held on to it. I've held on to it for 16 years now, and I'm not going to let it go. So I don't want to go down the road where, like I said, I resent people around me and I resent myself. I refuse to do that. I also refuse to live my life where I'm building more regrets. Now, I started my YouTube channel in about August of 2023. It was really, I started it as a dare to myself because I'm very much an introvert. I don't like being in front of a camera. I don't like taking pictures. I never have. I never will. But about 9 to 10 months in, so that would be, I don't know, about June of 24, I found that I enjoyed making content. That being in front of the camera wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I still don't like it, but it's not as bad as I thought. And I know a lot of people that make content, they don't like doing the editing part. I actually like the editing. But again, as I said earlier in this oral essay, I want peace. I want calmness. I want quiet. That's why I revamped my YouTube channel quite a few times. And starting over, right? I can start over as many times as I want to. And that's why I'm starting over doing these oral essays. Sorry about that. That was my laptop moving around. Maybe I will come back and do something on camera. I don't know. Maybe I won't. But I just, I cannot stress it enough, y'all. I just want some peace. I want some quiet. I want some calmness. Now, I thank you all for listening. I hope I gave you some things to contemplate. Because later in life, don't we do a whole hell of a lot of things? Well, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection. And again, that's where those periods of regret come in, right? So if I can give anybody any real food for thought, as the phrase goes, stop living your life in a way that causes you to have more regrets. As the young people say, and I said it earlier, you do you. Thank you again for listening. I'm going to try and do about 2 of these a week. I've been told that my voice is soothing. So we shall see. All the best.